Quest. I was trying. I was trying something new, because I open it the same way every time.
How'd it feel?
I think you could hear me bailing on it at the end.
Yeah, I could tell that. Yeah, you
You
were
could,
regretting it already. Yeah.
yeah, like the start. There was some excitement there at the start, and then I like. And here's the thing. This is what's really important to know, and I say this to all of you out there in the radio land, is that the way things happen is by coming in with confidence and staying with confidence, because you gotta stick to it. And I think I would have been able to fool everyone if I did it with full confidence.
Yeah, they
That's the
couldn't see your
lesson.
face. They couldn't
Yeah.
see the flop sweat that somehow formed in that like 3-second period it took you to say, it's Quest.
See, that's pretty good. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
but
it was.
you, Doug, you have a certain baritone timbre, which I don't have. I have something in there, but I think you have a deeper. There's a deeper baritone in there that I think that you can pull to.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's a cheat. It's a cheat. Yeah,
yeah,
it makes me sound very serious.
yeah. That's and that's why you're a professor.
It's all that gravitas that I bring to the table.
um I was gonna try to do like kind of a defying gravitas joke.
Oh.
You think anyone's ever? People must have done that. I wouldn't be surprised if that was in one of the like the Broadway Follies shows where they do all the
Mm.
parodies of the musicals. But has
Lincoln's hot right now, and you're a huge fan.
yeah has uh has Weird Al ever done a parody of a musical song?
Okay. He did a Hamilton polka, which was like
Okay,
all the
okay.
greatest hits of Hamilton set to a polka beat. I know this. Beyond that, I'm honestly not sure. And that one, he didn't like Weird Al it. He just polka'd it.
Yeah, he just poked it. Wait,
Yeah,
yeah,
it was normal Al doing a polka.
no, it was still a little weird. It
True.
was still,
He did have
you
some
know,
like
what, it was still a little
horns and
weird.
yeah.
It
He
was
had some
still a
sound
little weird.
effects, wacky sound effects.
I with my friends recently over Discord, I had a really fun night where uh we would watch the original music video of something and then the Weird Al parody of it. We just did that for like 3 hours. And I got to tell you, that's a great way to spend an evening,
That
is
sounds
watching
amazing.
the original music video. This is a suggestion I'm giving to you, Jess, and I'm giving
Okay.
to all of our listeners. It's just a delightful evening on YouTube, is looking up all of your, because like what's also fun about it is that some of them are like, straight parodies of the music video as well, both the song
Yes.
and the music video, but some of them just go in a completely different direction. And some of them also, I had seen the Weird Al parody, but I hadn't seen the original. Like whatever, I forget the name of it. Whatever the parody of that I Lost on Jeopardy is a parody of.
Yes, my life's in jeopardy.
My Life's in Jeopardy. Like most of that music video uh is not parodied except for the very end, which I was always confused about the end of the Lost on Jeopardy thing. And now I say to you, Jess, and I say to all the listeners, now go out and watch my Life in Jeopardy, the music video, and then I Lost on Jeopardy, which is one of my favorite Weird Al
Mm.
music videos.
That's good. That's a good one. I mean, I think my favorite is maybe Beverly Hillbillies
That's a
and
good one.
the Money for Nothing parody there,
Yeah,
because
yeah, yeah.
there it's one where it's absolutely like I am recreating the video, and it's so well done.
You know what? Like, I mean, and this feels kind of a basic one to say, but the Smells Like Teen Spirit, smell like and then like the Weird Al parody one,
Gets the
uh,
job done.
is so good, and it's
It is.
so like watching, and those two together, watching the Nirvana original and then the Weird Al one.
Mhm.
Uh, So funny. Yeah. So anyway, that's a good
Yeah.
way. Welcome to
Welcome to
uh
Yank Yank, the
yeah,
Weird Al
welcome to
podcast.
Yeah, welcome to Yank Yank.
The Weird Al Crank Yankers podcast. We cover
Yeah.
two topics here: Weird Al and the Comedy Central puppet prank call show, Crank
You
Yankers.
see, I thought that meant that we only prank call Weird Al. Like, oh,
I
you're
think.
calling me again, huh?
What do you got this time?
Yeah. All right, welcome to Quest, the adventure game podcast. I'm Ben, also PS_Garrick on Twitch, and you are.
Jess, Decaf Jedi on Twitch and everywhere else.
Yeah, that's true. Um, and so Jess, I have a question for you. What have you been playing this week?
Oh, Ben, I have been playing for the first time ever. I'm cheating. I'm going to talk about an adventure game.
Yeah,
I've been
disappointing.
playing The Adventures of Willie Beamish,
Hey,
the Dynamics classic, The Adventures of Willie Beamish. And let me say,
it's got to be the best Dynamics adventure, not counting Space Quest 5, right?
I think
I
there's a
mean,
good
I
chance
haven't
of
played
that.
all the other ones, but the other ones don't seem that good. I
I
guess I just
mean,
have to play Heart of China.
there's Heart of China, which I don't know if that is
It
holds up
seems
great.
like it seems like a game that
Yeah. Rise of
uh
the Dragon is like,
yeah,
hey, have you seen Blade Runner? What if it was worse?
right.
I've played that one. And
Okay.
isn't there at least one erotic one? Which is probably the best.
Deja Vu or something, or no, it's not
I don't
Deja
know.
Vu. It's something
Yeah,
like that.
Willie Beamish is probably the crown jewel, though, right? I mean, as flawed of an adventure as that may be. I mean, I will say
You're
I've
a
never played
lot
it
hotter
before.
on Willie Beamish listening to you talk about it, like on the stream and on our
Yeah,
Discord. You're a lot more pro Willie, or as some call it, Wally Beamish.
that was
Uh,
the original name in Japan.
right.
Was Wally Beamish? Yeah,
Yeah, they changed it, and now like some people hold on to Willie, like some people hold on to
yeah,
Dr. Robotnik.
yeah.
Um,
Willy Panic was the original name.
and he did. Anyway,
Yeah,
so how are you enjoying Willie
I
Beamish?
mean, I'm like an hour and a half into it, and it's fine. I mean, I think if you know that like Willie's family is going to be awful and just materialistic and mean and like all the horrible scenes at the beginning of Home Alone and all that sort of stuff. It's like, okay, maybe I can imagine this is satire, even though I'm not entirely sure the extent to which that was the intention.
It's very cooked in, like, it is absolutely a product of the like early 90s. Like it, and that's one of the problems I have with Willie Beamish, is that it doesn't feel at all original.
No.
Is that it is like all everything that it is inspired by,
Yeah.
like early Simpsons.
Yeah. Lazy early Simpsons, every sitcom trope imaginable. It has too many things going on. Like, nobody should be allowed to have a ghost grandpa, a champion jumping frog, and like a major video game tournament that they're participating in, and just all these other like Willie needs to a skateboard. He needs to just trim one back. Like, I don't know, it's too much. But I mean, it's fine so far. I mean, it's not a great game, but I mean, it looks pretty good.
Did did
Some of the voice acting's nice.
did you look at the manual
No, I
for
haven't.
it? You should look. The manual for Willie Beamish
I'm
is
raw
in
dogging
the
it.
style of like a because I remember I had a box copy of Willie Beamish that I couldn't play because it was the Mac version. Like I just picked it up in a bargain bin because I just wanted the box.
Yeah,
And the manual for it was this, like his school notebook, and so it was like written in pen and it had all these doodles in it, and it looked very cool. It was a very solid, like on theme in character manual.
Oh, nice. Well, it
Like
also came with like a menu for the pizza joint, right? And some stickers and some stuff like that in some of the
I
early releases.
think I probably
Yeah.
didn't get an
I think
early
it had a lot
release.
of feelies for a Sierra Dynamics game.
Yeah, like it just looked like the manual is what I remember, and I think it belongs in the pantheon alongside like the pharmacology manual that they did for Freddy Farkas and like the guide to the Green Isles and King's Quest 6, like among the point and click adventures, because you know if we get into Infocom that would take forever, but
Oh yeah, I mean that's where
point
the
and click
feelies live.
adventure, yeah, like interesting manuals.
Note to Ben, listeners, please tune out for the next 10 seconds or so. We should do an episode on feelies and other
And
inbox
manuals,
stuff.
cool
Yeah,
manuals, yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
that'd be a good
listeners, you
one.
can come back now.
Welcome back.
Yeah.
um and that reminds me, we were emailed a good idea for an episode, um that
Where can
we
people
we
email
need to
us
do.
though?
People can email us at questquestpodcast@gmail.com. Now, I've been playing lately. uh I uh I am finally hip to the hot memes of 2 years ago, because I have finally played Trombone Champ. But I will say that I mixed it up. I got the recent Trombone Champ, which is in VR, where you mime out playing a trombone. Your arm feels
Hmm.
sore because you're
Finally.
like pushing it out. And did you ever play Trombone Champ when that came out? And I'll describe what Trombone Champ is for
No, once
anyone.
again, like you say this, and at first I think you're just trolling me by making up a game. But here it is on Steam. If this is a troll, you've really done your
Oh,
work.
dude, you gotta. All right, well, this
Can I
is
describe it?
exciting.
Can I describe it?
S-
Like just looking at the
Sure.
screenshots.
Yeah.
It looks like a Miiverse character, like a
Yeah.
Nintendo Wii
Yeah.
avatar,
Yep.
playing a
Yes.
trombone
Right.
against some vaporwave backgrounds.
Kind of.
Okay.
But the so it is. Yeah. The main thing is that it is. Yeah. It is doing like it is a trombone music like rhythm game. And the joke of it is, number one, that it's a trombone, and that's funny. Number
Yes.
two is that it's entirely public domain music.
Okay.
So it's like Ave Maria and Stars and Stripes Forever, and like various Yankee Doodle, and a bunch of like Oh Canada is in there and some other
Good. Good.
stuff.
Good.
And also like the trombone sound they got for it is pretty funny sounding, like it's like a real like like it has a good funny, and like it's a hard game, so it's like you are fucking up the trombone part of a very recognizable tune. And like then the idea that all these me verse people are watching you in an auditorium and booing or cheering you a trombone soloist. It is, Jess, I think you should probably play the original, the non-VR version,
I'm
because
kind
I
of into
think
this idea
people
now.
went
This.
nuts for like it was like for like 2 weekends of a month where it came out, it was a very hot like meme game. Like everybody streamed it for like one weekend and people went nuts. They're like, this is such a funny joke. And then they got over it. But if you haven't played it and have no knowledge of it, then like pick it up so you can enjoy the joke of Trombone Champ, which is also like a fun game. I
Yeah.
had my friend Robin over, and that was their first VR experience, was playing Trombone Champ VR, and they also had no knowledge of the game. Like I was just
Mm.
like, "Oh, do you want to play Trombone Champ in VR?" And they're like, sure." And I put the headset on them, which they, as I said, they've never played in VR before, and they were just scream laughing
Oh
the
wow.
entire time. They were just cracking up.
I love a good rhythm game. I'm terrible at them.
Yeah,
Uh,
same, same,
but
same, same, same.
yeah, I mean, this sounds fantastic. Also, Ben, like, I'm wondering, how much would people have to like donate for you to do a stream of the VR version while wearing a red Star Trek: The Next Generation uniform? Could we get
Well,
some sort
I
of?
mean, I have a lower decks red uniform,
It's not gonna
which is
quite be the same as like the full Riker.
yeah. Well, that's all I got. I have a yellow Strange New Worlds command,
Oh man,
and I have a lower decks. I do not have a next gen red yet. So
this is your
maybe.
excuse to go for it. Now's the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah. Fuck. That would be
Ben, I don't
good.
want to say this. Let me tell you what you should actually get. Here's your next Star Trek uniform. I think you would look dashing in a DS9 medical science uniform.
Is this like that red one?
I'm thinking the gray with like the teal
Oh, with the teal
shoulder.
collar.
Yeah, teal collar and shoulders. Like season
Those
one,
the
like Bashir Dax season one, Deep Space
okay.
Nine,
Okay,
teal.
okay, so
Yeah.
season 1. Okay. I thought you were saying like the gray or purplish like shoulder,
Less
and
that
then
one,
they have
yeah.
the teal collar.
No, I'm thinking like the full on, you know, reverse TNG Deep Space
Yeah.
Nine. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll take a look and see if I can find a good. It's because I know like I've now met like somebody that's a hardcore, extremely good at cosplay
Ah.
guy. I know a couple of them, but I like met another one recently, and like he didn't say it, but I know that he looks down. But the fact is that it's extremely easy now online to find costumes to anything, which is why I've gone as Star Trek characters for 2 Halloweens in a row. And yeah, maybe I'll go for the Bashir medical one. That would be fun. You know what would be a fun specific DS9 uniform is Bashir's tennis outfit, like the white.
Yes. Yes. I immediately knew what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Yeah.
Well,
All right.
I
Well,
feel
all right. Enough of that. Let's let's get to the fucking podcast.
there you go. That's what I came here for. So this week, I'm very excited. We are going to be talking about a milestone game. We're going to be talking about, as you probably know already from the title, King's Quest One. That's right. We're talking King's Quest One. And Ben, I want to kick off this discussion of King's Quest One
Mhm.
with a question for you.
Yeah.
Is this the most important adventure game ever made?
So there's one thing I want to add, which is that this is the first in a series. We're going to play not next week. We're playing King's Quest 2, but we are now going to. This is, and we'll probably do this for Quest for Glory as well. But we are going to now play all of the King's Quests up to 7, and discuss them over this. This will be part of a ongoing full series thing, and why not start with something that might be the most important adventure game of all time. Okay, that's hard because it's like, I mean, because there are a couple different ways that you can go with this. One is you can say no. The most important adventure game of all time is Adventure,
Okay, I
which
think that's a valid answer.
also known as Colossal Cave. Back Some background for Adventure slash Colossal Cave, if you're unfamiliar. That was a game that was played on mainframes in what, like the 70s,
Yeah.
and it was if you haven't played like the recent remake, it is a game where you explore a large cave
Hmm.
and you have to get certain treasures and then bring them up
Hmm.
to like a treasure room,
Yeah.
and that's what the game is.
Yeah. Zork
And
shares a lot of its DNA.
Well,
Yeah,
Zork does, so does this.
that's
uh
right. We're
this
retrieving treasures.
this is like my note on King's Quest 1 when I was playing it for this stream is if it came out today, it would be called a adventure like
Oh, tell me
because
more.
it is like it uses because yeah, all right. So to return to all right, so your question is this the most important adventure game of all time? I don't know if I could give a qualified yes or no, but I can
Adventure's a
say
good contender. I mean,
is
Zork is arguably
yeah,
a strong contender. What else is on the list? Like, what else can you make a case
Monkey
for?
Island.
Yeah, or is
Uh
Maniac Mansion the better pick there than Monkey Island? I mean, Monkey
Monkey
Island's the
Island.
better
I would
game.
absolutely say
Okay.
Monkey Island, both in terms of the quality of its design and then also
Mhm.
because like Monkey Island is always brought up. Like Maniac Mansion is important and it's
Yes.
interesting and it has a very interesting design, but more games are trying to be Monkey Island than they are trying to be Maniac Mansion. Every now and again, there's a game that tries to be Maniac Mansion, but
Mhm.
all the time, there are games that are trying to be Monkey Island.
Far more influential in that sense. But
It,
yeah, this is, I've been curious about. I've really been trying to think through this question myself. Of course, King's Quest One. I bet most of our listeners are familiar. We're talking about the classic Sierra adventure game designed by Roberta Williams,
mhm.
originally released alongside the IBM PC Junior
Yep.
in 1984. Ben,
It was
you
the
had
like the killer app,
it was designed from the ground up to show off the graphics capabilities,
the
the
sound.
sound
Yeah.
capabilities. This was a game that was meant to be like the killer app for
It's
the PC
and
Junior.
interesting because and this isn't an original thought. I'm either cribbing this from Stephen Levy in Hackers or Jimmy Mayer on the Digital Antiquarian. But it is kind of an interesting thing that this comes out of funding from IBM, which is, not at all a company that would be considered, uh, one that would be interested in bright and fanciful fantasy adventure, like fantasy video games.
Yeah. They call
Uh,
them Big Blue, not Big 16 colors.
that's right. And um, this was made and it's being stuck to the PC Junior almost killed Sierra, which was already in trouble. And again, I'm referring to like those two previous authors to like to as my historical source on that. But uh, because the PC Junior was a flop, but fortunately, a whole bunch of companies, including Radio Shack with the Tandy, which is what you had,
Yes.
um
They
uh
cloned
uh
that ding dang thing.
yeah, like we're just like, all right, well, we're just going to clone it because this is
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden uh you know then there was an audience for it. But
Yeah.
yeah,
It
we
ends up
had a
being a
PC Junior,
tremendous.
you had a what, a
Yeah.
Coco?
No, 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 Ben, not a Coco. Tandy 1000 EX.
Wow.
A much, much more powerful system. My neighbor had a Coco. I played a lot of Dungeons of Daggerath on that one, but a Dagorath.
Hmm.
Does anyone know how Mister Daggerath pronounces his name? But
I believe it was from IBM. So to return back to the adventure like thing, is that I say it's adventure like colossal cave like because it is you have a big wide open area and you have to get a bunch of treasures and then the game is over and you can get the treasures in any order and also like there are treasures that you have to get and then like but also there's just stuff in King's Quest 1 that you can get that is just like and you found some gold.
yes, it's a very point. Like the points really mattered. It's the opposite of whose line is it anyway? In this game, I mean, a big part of it is how do I max out my score by finding not only the three treasures of Daventry that Sir Graham has been sent in search of, but also all the other stuff littered around the kingdom. King's Quest 2 maintains a lot of this too, where
Yeah.
there's still just treasure hunting. But you're right in the sense that beyond that, I mean, the narrative is basically King's dying, go get my stuff. You got my stuff, hooray.
Well, I have
And I'm dead
actually
now.
a little bit of audio for I prepared of what Graham has to get via the voice acting from one of the remakes of this game. This is the AGD remake of King's Quest One that was done in 256, and it has voice. And you can download this online. Here it is.
The first treasure is a magic mirror that foretells the future. The second is a magical shield that protects the bearer from all mortal harm. The third and last is an enchanted chest that is forever filled with gold.
I was actually very amused by the the voice acting in it, and I almost had like a voice clip from that was like 5 minutes long, and then
It's very good. Yeah, I like that. I
decided
like
not
that.
because I was just like that would be way too much. But
You know,
yeah,
hearing the
you have to get
description
those.
of each of those treasures, I really think that Graham underutilized them throughout his time as
The
king.
mirror gets so I was about to say that uh in 2 and 3 and 4 and 6 the mirror
Mirror gets a lot
is
of play.
is part of the plot. We never hear about the other stuff.
Yeah, and those others seem super important. First of all, Graham is unkillable with the shield. I would carry the shield everywhere. Why does he ever not carry the shield?
Yeah,
And you know, all the money in the world.
it's very easy to kill Graham.
That's the big problem.
Right.
I mean, how much easier would King's Quest V have been if he just strapped his shield to his back?
Well, fortunately, 5 is one that I didn't list as having the mirror because you spend no time in the castle.
Well, it's been
The
shrunk.
castle is
It's been
stolen.
shrunk.
Yeah, it's
So
been
it's like a
shrunk and
tiny little
stolen.
shield.
But anyway, yeah. Uh, uh, I think IBM also asked them to make it a little like kind of non-linear in its design. I believe that was an ask
Mm-hmm.
for it because you've played the high res adventures, which were what Sierra's adventures before this. What were
Yes.
those like? What did those have in common with King's Quest One? Or
What do they have
not
in common with King's Quest One? I mean, if you look at the game, probably the most obvious, you know, predecessor to this is The Wizard and the Princess or Adventures in Serenia. You know, there, what you have in common with it, I mean, it is a graphic adventure. You're seeing, you're seeing images of the locations you're standing in on screen.
So those are
Um,
for background. The high res adventures by Sierra before King's Quest were text adventures with pictures. But anyway,
right,
sorry. Go
Mystery
on.
House being the first of those. Wizard and the Princess being a little bit more advanced with a little bit fancier graphics.
There's Time Warp.
Um, what's that?
Time Warp is one
Is
of
that
them.
what Time Zone? I believe.
Time Zone. Time Zone.
Yeah,
That's
Time
right.
Zone. But yeah, the Wizard and the Princess has that fairy tale vibe that we know of from King's Quest. The big difference is you are looking at a static image, which is more or less first person. You don't have an ego or a character on screen that you're moving around. You are seeing a scene that then is being described to you in text on screen. When you move to a new location, it simply just flips to the new image of that location instead. The novelty of King's Quest is this idea that you are steering a little man
3D
around.
animated.
Yeah, it's 3D animated. You can walk behind trees, you can walk in front of trees, you can walk beside trees. All four sides of a tree you can walk on.
I guess I was also curious, were the high res adventures, do you recall, did they like were they more like because King's Quest One, as you said earlier, it's kind of story light. Get the stuff and then the game's over. You go back to the castle and then you
Mm-hmm.
become the king. Um in like do the high res adventures, do those have like more plot? Are they also non-linear? Are they kind of similar to Colossal Cave? Or are they a little more linear, like kind of like later King's Quest game?
As I remember, like Wizard and the Princess, especially, it was very linear. You shot through that game in kind of one way. I think it aspired to be more narrative, but the limitations of how much text they could put on the screen at a time every
Because there's like
description.
2 or 3 lines at the
Two or
bottom.
three lines, yeah, at
Yeah.
most. So there wasn't a whole lot of room to develop stuff. You didn't encounter many NPCs. Like the other characters that you did encounter tended to be, monsters or a snake that you have to figure out a
Oh, that
way to get around.
fucking snake.
I think it aspired to be more narrative in a way, but ultimately just didn't have the technology. And probably, I think also, I mean, Roberta Williams is a designer who grows by leaps and bounds between like Mystery House and, I mean, I suppose you could argue Mask of Eternity was the last game she worked on for Sierra, but probably more realistically, King's Quest Seven. I mean, she really ups her game consistently through that. I think she simply got better at telling stories, at designing adventure games, at coming up with compelling hooks for these things in the first place.
Yeah, and I guess yeah, like so what I'm still stuck on your original question. Is it the most important? Because like I answered that with like saying it's like, well, it's a very interesting piece. This is what I was thinking a lot of when I was replaying it for this podcast, was that it feels very much a transition,
Mm,
like a really major pivot point transition, where this is the game that like, so this is the first, as you said, there's an ego, there's an avatar that you directly control on the screen, and that becomes what adventure games are after that,
yeah.
like, and
You have occasional forays still into first person
yeah.
perspectives, but by and large, this is a genre where your character is now represented on screen and you move them around as you explore and interact with the world.
And then like, and so the design, like the game is very similar to, as I said, a game. So this is 84, so it's a game probably like 10 years older than it, or maybe a little less than
Hmm.
that. But the the actual like game of it, like, so, and it has a text input, has a text parser, but like the how it looks and how you interact with it, that you push up and Graham moves up, you push down and Graham moves down, etc., like that's all brand new. And also like the graphics, which I still think look good, like, the graphics look great and looked better than anything else at that time.
Yeah. And they're
uh
still iconic today.
yeah. And
It defines a visual style that would persist through all of Sierra's
yep.
AGI games. I mean, they vary, not too much from this original template. Now, part of that is, you had a lot of repeat artists along the way,
Right.
but I mean, very much. I mean, what you see in King's Quest One isn't that different from what you end up seeing later on in Leisure Suit Larry, Space Quest. Like their way of representing a three-dimensional world in two dimensions and 16 colors, it really sets a template that becomes very much the house style.
Yeah. And it's so fun, like, to think about how there are 8 more of the, or not 8 more, there are 7 more. This is the first, so there are 7 up to Mask of Eternity. And like this first game, and I mean, and this is true of so many other like video game franchises that persisted through like major paradigm shifts, like you think about Mario 1, and then I don't know, Mario Odyssey. Um uh is that like they it is still like the bedrock of all King's Quest games up to that point, until, or after that point, except for Mask of Eternity, which is a
Its
very
own
different thing.
thing. Yeah, I
Um
mean, yeah, it tries to integrate RPG mechanics and combat, and I mean, from what I understand, I haven't played Mask of Eternity. I understand that there's something of a King's Quest game to be enjoyed there, but it is its own thing, no question about it.
but so yeah, I mean, it's a game I still very much, I enjoy it, and I enjoy it for, and I think I've talked about this in earlier ones. What I like about is that when I played it as a little kid, I never beat it as a little kid because I was playing it tiny, and I just liked walking King Graham around this space. That's something I really liked about it, is that you just have all of these, and this is something that you would see across Sierra games until like about its middle period of it's just like a lot of wilderness, just
Yeah.
places that you wander around. I think you stop getting those maybe after Longbow.
Yeah, I think that might be a good cutoff for that. And I imagine part of that is the cost of producing the art assets had increased so much by the time you get to 256 colors, the higher resolutions, everything else. You can't just afford to have endless screens of this is just a screen with an interesting tree on it. You know?
Well, and I think that also that like design
Yeah.
moved beyond that where people like probably someone there was saying like, hey, what's the purpose of this scene? Is this scene necessary? um which I mean kind of ties into what you were saying.
Yeah.
uh
No, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think that there's probably the budgetary element, but also just the bigger question of like, well, what are these scenes doing? And I could see how you'd look at it and be like, well, they're doing nothing. They're just clogging up our game. Whereas I think I come down the side that you started out with, which is no, there's something to be said for this, exploration element. I mean, again, I know we've talked about this before. We sound like a broken record, but Quest for Glory 1 does this beautifully.
yeah,
Every screen doesn't have to be a screen where there's the solution to a puzzle on it
yeah,
because it makes it feel like a real place. I
makes
mean,
it feel like a place. Yeah.
yeah, I could go to all the rooms in my house and not all of them have puzzles for me to solve.
That's strange. Every room in my house has one puzzle.
Well, that's because you live in like a mist type house.
I know. I live in the 7th guest house.
Yeah, so yeah, I mean, you walk into a room, there's a chessboard there, and you got to figure stuff out. I mean, that's
Yeah,
pretty
just
typical.
every
Yeah,
day.
yeah. No, I mean, that was your mistake. I mean, maybe another way to think about this. I mean,
Mhm.
does if we're imagining just King's Quest One, the original version? I mean, I guess there are a few different ways to talk about the original version. There's like the PC booter, and then the one that updates to
No,
a
it's
maybe
pronounced
the
computer.
PC booter.
Mhm.
Um, there's that, and then there's the one that updates to like a. Oh man, are those the sweet sounds of Greensleeves?
Yeah, brought to you by King's Quest 1.
Yes. Later on, yeah, there'd be an AGI version of this that like updates to like the slightly newer version of the engine and everything. But does the original King's Quest One hold up today?
The So I didn't play like version 1, which
Yeah.
where
Well,
the text responses are within
Yeah.
the prompt as opposed to the white boxes like descriptions.
Yeah. I know there are some like hardcore fans out there who are going to be mad if I say this, but I think we can treat that the same as like just the straight up more familiar version that like pops up on GOG or Steam nowadays.
Yeah, no, there's differences, but
Yeah.
they are minor.
Yes.
Of course, you and I having played it on, the original hardware it was designed for, we have memories of the way that it used to draw in. We talked about this on the AGI episode, where because they couldn't get space on the discs for these individual scenes, what each scene had was instructions for the computer on how to draw it, and so you would watch the scene get drawn by the computer slowly, and then each piece
Yeah.
would fill in with color. And
And it
now
was magical.
I bet I would be deeply impatient with it, but at the time, and maybe people were impatient with it then, but at the time, I remember thinking like, "This is so cool looking."
Oh yeah. Yeah,
That
no, it was
it draws
fantastic.
in.
It never occurred to me that was like a technical necessity.
Yeah, it seemed like
Uh,
a style choice. I
That's
mean,
right. Yeah, even as
not
a kid,
that
I was like,
as a
yeah.
kid I would be like, "Oh, they did this as a aesthetic choice." I was just like, I like that it does that.
Yeah, it was cool that they decided to do that, was what I thought. Yeah. But I mean, does it hold up? I mean, as you sit down to play this game here in the year 2025, is King's Quest 1 still a good game?
I think it's fine. You know,
I think it's pretty good. I
yeah,
don't think
like
you
I
wanna
don't
claim
think
it's
it's
the best King's
bad.
Quest, right?
It, I don't think it's bad. I think the only knock against King's Quest 1 at the time, the original would be this horrible puzzle in it. Most of
Mm.
the puzzles in it are fine.
Yeah, they're fine.
They kind of operate on a like a kind of this kind of internally consistent fantasy logic, which is kind of irritating, but like in general, it's fine and pretty solvable,
yeah,
except for one, which
except for
is
one.
there's this island where there's this little mischievous little gnome or
Mm.
dwarf working on a spinner that turns hay to or straw to gold, and he says, "What's my name?" And of course, we all know that's Rumpelstiltskin, but and everybody that's listening to this podcast knows this, but I will continue to explain. You find, completely unrelated, a sheet of paper in the witch's house. There's a witch. You find a sheet of paper that says, "Sometimes it helps to think of things backwards." So you read that and you go, "Oh, well, there's this like, so if you decide to, for whatever reason, put those two things together, even though there's
Not
nothing that
connected in any way.
implies there's
Yeah.
nothing that implies the witch never says, my grand friend,
Mhm.
the little gnome on the island."
Yeah, and in all fairness, King Graham has murdered her before she has a chance to say anything like that.
Yeah. He could eavesdrop on her a little bit.
Yeah.
And so, but no, he doesn't like, so you read this note that says sometimes it helps to think of things backwards, and you go, aha, okay, well then you, because you say the gnome Rumpelstiltskin, he goes, he no, you have two more chances because you only have three guesses. And then so then you type Rumpelstiltskin backwards, and he goes, he no, that's not my last name, or that's not my name. And then you think, oh, I must have typoed it. And so then you get out a sheet of paper and you very carefully, and then you make sure that you type it correctly. You're like,
Mhm.
oh, I must have just typed his name backwards wrong. And then so you put it in a third time wrong, and then and then he goes, ha ha ha, no. And you don't have any more guesses, so you can't get the thing I give you, which I forget. What does he? I just played this. What does Rumpelstiltskin
Oh
give you?
gosh, does he give you the key to the Land of the Clouds area, or
Oh, he gives you he gives you the seeds.
seeds?
Yeah, that take you up the
Yeah.
beanstalk to the giant world. Thank you. Um, but no, in the original, this is a case of the like a puzzle writer, like a puzzle designer getting like eh, kind of out thinking themselves. It's how, what is it, Jess?
I mean, it's a mess. I mean, just the fact that there's no like canonical spelling of Rumpelstiltskin to begin with makes this a horrible puzzle. Like, I mean, it's not even necessarily the version of thinking backwards it's asking for isn't the only spelling of Rumpelstiltskin one might come up with that is supported. So even there, you're like, okay, if I can figure out which version of Rumpelstiltskin spelling they're going for, and then realize I have to apply a reverse alphabet cipher
You have to,
to
yes, it is a
that.
reverse alphabet cipher. So it is not spelling Rumpelstiltskin backwards. It is a cipher that it's like, so instead of A equal, like it's like Z equals A, like it's,
Yeah, it's a mess. It's a complete mess. And I mean,
it
to the
expects a
game's
lot.
credit, it's not necessary, but it is, I mean, I think legitimately on the all-time worst adventure
It's a
game
pretty nasty
puzzles.
puzzle. How do you get
Yeah,
up there instead? You get a key to the door?
Yeah, doesn't he give you a key if you can't guess
Oh, I don't
correctly?
know, because I
I
always
think
guess
that's.
correctly.
Let's see here. I'm now. This is bad because if you didn't guess the gnome's name, he leaves you a gold key anyway, and then you can go in through the bottom of the big staircase
And
that
then that
goes
means
up.
you have to do this complicated, which you have to do anyway.
You have to do it anyway on the way down. So I
Yeah,
mean, it
like
could be
there's
worse.
this stair quest style complicated
Hmm.
stair
It
up,
was
which
inspired by
by the
Stair
way,
Quest.
if you take the beanstalk, that's also tricky.
Yes, neither one is a good option. So yeah, I mean, this could be much. If this were the only way to get to that upper area, I mean, this if that was the only way to get the treasure chest, nobody would have ever finished this game without hints or a call to the Sierra hint line or a hint book or whatever. This would be unbeatable. Like nobody's ever going to accidentally solve that puzzle, are they? I mean, are there people who are good enough at adventure games to be like, aha, I get what they mean here?
Someone must have figured it out, but
Someone must have.
uh, it is like even yeah, it's a bullshit puzzle.
It
What?
absolutely is. I mean, I don't think there's any legitimate defense of it, but it's a small part of the game
Yeah,
and it's optional. So
yeah, that's
that,
fair.
yeah, that helps it. But otherwise, like you said, I mean, most of the puzzles are very, I mean, they remind me a bit like, I'm thinking of the troll that guards the bridge, where the puzzle is, well, trolls hate goats and
And
goats love carrots.
and the
So you've
and the game even says it's like goats a troll's worst enemy or something like
right. So I mean, it's very like mixed up Mother Goose. It's like, okay, I know like the story of the Billy Goat's Gruff, and I know trolls guard bridges, and I can kind of put one and one together and get this. A lot of the puzzles are very straightforward like that, but again, by the standards of what Sierra had done some of its previous games, this was pretty sophisticated. It wasn't maybe comparable to what Infocom was doing in a lot of their games at the time, where they were much more, elaborate and sophisticated puzzles. But this is a step forward, definitely, and one thing to iterate on. I mean, by the time you get to King's Quest 3, you're getting some pretty neat puzzles. 4, 5, 6, have built even further on top of this. So, no, in that sense, yeah, I think that even with sort of one egregiously bad puzzle, the puzzles otherwise are pretty fine in this game.
yeah, it's a logic that makes sense like to a kid. Like it's like
Absolutely.
show the like I as a kid like there was just stuff I was able to figure out. It's funny like Daventry is so depopulated. Like there's just
You
two
have a
guards.
woodcutter.
And the two guards are only there in the SCI version and
Mm-hmm.
the AGD remake. I don't think the guards are there in the original.
I don't believe so.
The king. Then you have a woodcutter, his dying wife, a fairy godmother,
Mm-hmm.
Rumpelstiltskin, a troll, a giant, a underground city of leprechauns,
An enchanter.
an enchanter, a like a dwarf that steals stuff. Is that it?
I think we may have just
And a
listed
witch.
and the
Did I
witch.
say
Yeah,
the witch? Yeah.
yeah. And by the end of the game, a few of those are dead. So
You kill
bad
the
news for
witch,
them.
or well, you can without. You don't have to kill the witch, right?
I'm going to kill a witch if I know I'm dealing with a
Yeah.
witch. I mean, that's just like protocol.
And
Ben, I'm part of a long tradition of warriors known as witchers,
oh yeah,
and yeah, that's part of my
you have
sworn
two
oath.
swords. With a silver sword and was it the
Yeah,
iron sword?
of course. Yeah, the great thing about launching into this is how much I know about the Witcher series,
Oh, good.
past the name of it. So,
Great.
like, ask me any other questions you might have.
Uh, let's see. I've played the Witcher games, and I'm just not a Witcher head. I've tried them all. Just
Yeah.
bounced off all of them. Sorry, everyone. But
But no,
What else did you? I know you had some discussion points on this. What else struck you when you were playing it this time?
I mean, for the original, just like straight up AGI King's Quest, that's a lot of what I wanted to talk about there. I mean, I can say, personally, I played King's Quest 2 first, but King's Quest 1 and King's Quest 2, I feel like are
Very
cut from
similar.
so much the same cloth. These are games that for me were hugely just formative. And of course, eventually would go on to inspire me and my pals to make StairQuest, decades later. But
Mhm.
I'm curious. This is a game that's also gotten its share of remakes along the way.
Yeah,
And you and I have played.
a bunch of them.
I think we've played about every version of this
Maybe.
now.
All right, so
Maybe.
list them off. List them.
Okay. So, I mean, in addition to like all the different AGI versions, you have
Right.
the original version for IBM PC Junior with that crazy cover, which shows like a guy in a full suit of armor,
Right.
like swinging a sword that has nothing to do with the game.
Yep.
And then the later
Which is not
versions
the
are
version that we had. We had the
no.
gray box with the cursive.
Okay, gotcha. And then later on, you get DOS and Amiga and Atari and Apple GS, whatever. But really, the first attempt to remake this one comes in 1989 on the Sega Master System.
This
This is
is
a game we've
such
talked.
a wild remake.
It is,
It
and
is
I believe
because
we
it
talked
looks
about it a
great.
little bit on our like console adventures episode.
Yeah.
It does look great. They take the graphics and like really turn it into like console sprite style graphics. You get the best character in this game, hands
The
down, is the Banana
Banana
Wizard.
Wizard.
Yeah, I mean the Enchanter now is like wearing a yellow
Yellow. Yeah.
robe. I mean, he kind of looks like the peanut butter jelly time character. Isn't that like a banana? Am I imagining
I
that?
do not recall. Oh, I know. Yeah, he does kind of look like the peanut butter
Yeah,
and jelly banana.
yeah. But I
Uh,
mean, this is a fantastic version, though. I mean, it manages to get most of
how does it do the parser? I
how's
say
it do the
leadingly.
parser. You have like your A and B buttons or whatever they were on the original controller
Mm-hmm.
that open up a menu that is context sensitive. It will give you a list of verbs that change depending on where you're standing and what scene, and a list of nearby nouns. And you just like form little basic sentences. It's almost like a
Like
kind
the
of like
Legend games.
yeah, exactly. So you aren't like dragging a cursor around the screen so much as you are steering Graham with the D-pad and then just like assembling simple verb noun commands out of this little menu, which is pretty intuitive. It actually works surprisingly well. They get all of the game in there, and it looks great. It's a really charming version. I think it's one that gets overlooked a lot, like by people,
Mm-hmm.
but I just visually, I think it's really striking. And just it looks nothing like a Sierra game, even though it is still King's Quest.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I love most about it. It's it doesn't feel like anything that Sierra ever released themselves.
And then in what 1990, I believe, there's
Yes,
a SCI Zero version, and that's what you played this week as well, right?
yes, and that one is it's 16 color graphics, but it's the upgraded SCI Zero engine, so it's the same engine that you saw in King's Quest 4. It adds sound card support and has a beautiful soundtrack. It has higher resolution, 16 color graphics. One of the things that I think really strikes me most about the SCI remake version of this, what I like most about it, I think we've both spoken before that we're both big Josh Mandel fans here at
Mm-hmm.
Quest. And Josh Mandel contributes some new text,
Yeah.
quite a bit of new dialogue for this game. And I think it's great because he's a good writer. There's some good bits in there, some funny gags, and just a lot more
Yeah,
description.
like there's a lighter, there's a light touch of humor in it that feels very, I mean, obviously it feels very like Josh Mandelli. Like you can tell that he was involved with it.
Right, absolutely. I mean, yeah, the sort of stuff that he would bring to the table later on in Freddy Farkas and Space Quest 6. I mean, this is like a trial run for him, which I understand is something Sierra did a lot of, giving junior designers chances to do, little pieces of work like this to prepare them for bigger jobs down the road. But, the original King's Quest, I hate to say it's underwritten, but it's certainly sparse.
Well, it's like they probably didn't have a ton of room.
Right.
Especially
It's very
the
workmanlike.
original as said, like on the PC Junior, the text description would not be in like a dialogue box, but instead would be in like with the text parser squished in at the bottom. So there wasn't a ton of room for a lot of description stuff.
Right. Yeah. Any description that you had to parse through with several returns is going to be difficult for the player to enjoy there. So this adds a lot of text. Now, I think that is as much. I mean, I think it's a fine looking game graphically. I love SCI Zero games. It's a little dithered. It's one of the SCI Zero games that really leans on the dithering quite a bit. I don't know if I love the look of it, but the soundtrack is beautiful and the writing really sparkles. I think in some ways, I don't know if it's the definitive version of King's Quest One, but as far as writing goes, I think it's the one that shines most brightly in that regard.
And then in what year did it come out?
It appears to be 2001.
2001. Good lord.
Yes. This game is now 24 years old.
Good lord. Yeah, so then there's that remake, which is a remake of the SCI Zero version. Like it very clearly is modeled on that version and not the original. And that's what I played this week. And it's funny because also I remember it was such a exciting moment when it came out, like for me, like that AGI remake, because I was just like, wow, someone could do this in like AGS with the Adventure Game Studio, which we talked a lot about last week with the Blackwell episode. But like it was just really exciting to see that someone could do that.
Oh, absolutely.
And the version out now, like they kept kind of tinkering with it over some years. The version out now, and this isn't how it launched, has voice acting, including full narration voice acting, which is actually pretty good, which I was quite surprised by for like, an amateur production. I thought like the narration was quite good. But what's really funny is talk about Josh, they get him back to
he
play.
is the voice of Graham in King's Quest V, and he returns here for King's Quest 1.
And what's so funny to me is it's like they get Josh back for it, but the thing is that like Graham has, but I mean, whatever, right? Like because it's cute, it's for fans, so it doesn't matter. Like Graham has only like 3 lines of dialogue. As you said earlier, there's not that many characters. But I noticed something when I played this remake through with the voices on this time, which I'd never noticed before, which was, so you think about Josh Mandel doing the voice of King Graham in King's Quest V. Jess, what would you say is maybe one of the most iconic King Graham deliveries in King's Quest V? You were not prepared for this, so maybe. But what's one of the more memorable line deliveries or things that comes out of Graham?
Ah!
Right. I have this here.
I'm so glad we were on the same page there, Ben.
Yeah.
That's
All right.
amazing.
So I noticed this thing, which was you could tell this was made by real fans because they got Josh to do another scream.
Oh.
But first off, I when I was capturing this, I didn't think enough to turn off the music. So you hear a little bit of the music, but here, so once again, for reference, here is the iconic, and this is known by, King's Quest. If you're a fan of King's Quest, you remember this scream. So in King's Quest 1, Graham can fall out of the clouds where the giant lives. And so this is what happens when this happens. Now, there's a couple key differences, one of which is that you can really tell that Josh was just using the mic that came with his computer. Remember,
Yes.
this is a game that came for free, and Josh was doing them a favor.
It's
So
one of those
let's,
little beige stick mics that had
Yeah.
like the little bass on it. Yeah.
I know that mic very well. We have that one too. And so, like, I'm not picking, not picking on AGD or Josh for not having
Yeah.
a nice mic in 2001 or whenever he recorded it. But I do have to think that when they recorded it, it's like, Josh, if you can fall, like, it doesn't like, obviously the original, like the KQ5 original is canonical.
Now I've forgotten what that one sounds like.
Oh yeah, me too.
I love it.
And so I felt like I had to bring that out, especially for fans listening, because I'm sure some people, they might not know that there's another pretty good Josh Scream out there. It's not as good as the original, but it is a nice little treat for the fans.
Mhm.
And
speaking like
you're listening to
treats
an
of the
adventure
fan.
game podcast discuss a game that you are intimately familiar with. So that I'm able to present you with something that you don't know. That's a treat.
That's right. That's the Quest promise. In an hour and 10 minutes, we will tell you one thing you don't already know, and there it is.
Yeah.
You know, I'm really fascinated. I haven't played AGD's King's Quest remake, and then of course, by the time you get to their remakes of King's Quest 2 and King's Quest 3, they're really like building and expanding on those games.
Yes.
This King's Quest 1 is basically a straight up remake.
Straight. It is.
Yeah.
It is completely straight. I'm sure. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like, some tiny little things or like a tiny little touch, but it feels very super faithful.
Yeah.
Their King's Quest 2 is like
Adding new plot lines, new puzzles.
And what I think we'll discuss as we discuss all of the King's Quest games in the coming, duration is that like you see King's Quest like kind of morph from like this adventure like from this caves like to a more linear, like with each installment, because like 2 is still kind of non-linear but kind of not. It has more linearity, and then 3 is the same way, and then 4 I would say is maybe the only like it's still it's still more linear, and then by the time you get to 5 and 6 and 7, like they become more of these story driven versus like you're on a island and wandering around game. 2 feels like they made a King's Quest sequel, like that it came out around the AGD 2, that is, feels like a King's Quest game that would be around 5 or 6. Like it is much more plot driven and stuff like that. And I think it's like I played it on the stream some years ago. I think it's pretty good. It is a little like there's some stuff I don't love about it, but I think it's really interesting and clever. And then with their 3, they kind of like it's a hybrid. It isn't like 2 is a completely different game. 3 is the same game and they changed some stuff, is my understanding.
Right. Yeah. No, I think that tracks with what I recall as well. But no, I mean, these are clearly labors of love. And yeah, they're ones that I've seen played and haven't gotten around to playing myself, and want to tackle eventually.
It's yeah. I think it has a similar problem that a lot of the VGA remakes of like Space Quest 1 and like
Hmm.
Larry 1 had, which is that when and I think this is what they try to solve with their King's Quest 2 remake is that when you remake like those very like especially those early but pretty much any of the AGI games is like uh but you play it in a 256 color point and click look, there are certain expectations the player I think will have of a full VGA point and click with a mouse adventure game that those games don't have, and so it feels kind of out of place. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yes,
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah.
like it's
It,
the same feeling I got with Space Quest 1 and VGA. There's a lot of meat on the AGI bone, but not a lot of meat on the SEI VGA bone. You know?
right. Yeah. I mean, I think that, yeah, if anything, it calls it to attention sort of the simplicity of those early games when you like sort of juxtapose it against the enhanced graphics.
Yeah, you just have a different expectation
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the
as a player.
beauty of some of those early AGI games is their simplicity.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think for people who love them, I mean, for people who probably coming to them for the first time, maybe today it's just like, ugh, these are baby games for babies. But I think for those of us who grew up playing them and love them, it's that simplicity that's part of the appeal. You know, if I want
mhm,
a much more sophisticated game, yeah, I'll skip ahead to Gabriel Knight 1 or something
right.
like that. But when I pick up an AGI game, it's not because I'm wanting sophisticated storytelling. I'm wanting that simplicity.
Jess, do you think that King's Quest 1 is the most important adventure game?
Ooh, that's a great question.
Because
You know,
I didn't flip it on you, and so
that's right.
and
You
like
didn't
that
flip it
just
on
hit
me.
me. I was like, wait a minute, I don't know what Jess thinks. I only know what I think.
I think it is.
You think it is?
I would say I'm going to come down with a pretty firm yes, just in the sense that I don't know that adventure ever broke through to a large enough audience to be quite as impactful, maybe as King's Quest One would later be. And I feel like while games like maybe Zork are, hugely popular and hugely influential, ultimately that's kind of a branch that, text adventures, interactive fiction, while it continues on to the modern day, doesn't become the template for what most commercial adventure games are going to be. I feel like King's Quest sets up a standard that everything else is, sort of a King's Questum up after that. It feels
Mm.
like, yeah, in that sense to me, it feels like the most important adventure game of all time.
After King's Quest, something changed
Absolutely, yeah.
in
The
expectations.
yeah,
Is
the
what you're
space
saying?
was never quite the same. I mean, Infocom continued to release games and release some marvelous games after that.
Yeah,
But
84. There was still a couple good ones. Like
yeah, that's right.
maybe their biggest. You know?
But I don't know that anyone in the industry at that point looked at and said, the future is in text adventures.
No.
I think after King's Quest 1, the future is in graphic adventures.
Right.
And I think that for me, I mean, again, yeah, Maniac Mansion, Secret of Monkey Island. I'm sure there's stuff that comes after those two that would be okay contenders. I can't think of any off the top of my head though. I don't know what game after Secret of Monkey Island would be in the discussion. Do you have to get to like a Mist or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, Mist, obviously, that's a major contender. I mean,
That's
certainly,
right.
especially if you're talking about sales, like
Oh yeah,
Mist is
yeah,
by like Mist has to be the best-selling adventure game of all time,
yeah.
right?
If you're an accountant, Mist is definitely the most
Yeah.
important adventure game of all time.
Like
But
Mist, but Mist kind of leads off into its own genre.
it does.
Like it kind of, but I mean, yeah, I think your points are well taken on that. And I think before we wrap this, did you want to talk a little bit about how it ties in with like the Odd Gentleman King's Quest 1? Or
Yeah,
not King's
I
Quest
really
1,
love
Odd Gentleman King's Quest.
yeah, the 2015 Odd Gentleman King's Quest episodic series. This is one that I played a few years ago that I really enjoyed. Like a lot of episodic games, it kind of bounced around in terms of quality from episode to episode. But in terms of getting the vibes of King's Quest, and man, in terms of getting Christopher Lloyd in there to voice Old Graham, what a performance! It is. I mean, yeah, Toonstruck's great, but have you heard Christopher Lloyd in the 2015 King's Quest? He's out of this world.
So they remake like kind of the story of King's Quest 1, is that right?
They have little bits of it. You see, like a lot of the the three treasures are around the King Edward dying and looking for successors there. The main element in beyond some references and Easter eggs and bits like that, it retells a version of Graham's encounter with the dragon. That's like
Oh yes,
the
yes,
big
yes,
set.
yes.
That's the big set piece in the first episode of this is Graham's encounter with the dragon, where in the original game he claims the magic mirror. It retells that with a lot of embellishment, a lot of different angles and stuff, but it's incredibly charming. This is one that it's far from a remake of King's Quest 1, but it borrows elements. This is one that I would tell everybody, if you haven't played it yet and you love King's Quest, it is worth jumping into. Even if you just play that first episode to get a feel for this reimagined version of King Graham's first adventure, it's worth taking a look at. I think it's one I enjoyed quite a bit.
Cool. Yeah, no, I never played those. I watched you stream that but I never played those. They are interesting. Like yeah, it's um and it is interesting that they does it have you go down the well in
It
the
does.
it does have you go down the well.
You go
Okay.
down the well, yeah. So and then you have some cool little environmental puzzles. You have some actiony type scenes. It's good stuff. I think that it really captures a lot of those vibes without without necessarily just giving you what you already know. And I will say, not to reference the famous King's Quest 4 ad, but you will believe a computer game can make you cry if you play.
I remember it made you cry. That I do remember.
Well, I mean, Ben, you see me cry at a lot of video games at this point,
That's
though.
true.
I mean, I cry like every third game I play. So I'm just a sensitive guy. I'm not going to change that about myself just because you bully me.
All right. Well, anything else? Anything else about King's Quest 1 before we close the book and never discuss King's Quest 1 ever again?
I'm sure it will never come up again, especially when down the road we have an episode about King's Quest 2. We will in no way reference King's Quest 1. But no, it's a classic. Roberta Williams deserves her flowers. She deserves her place in the history of video games and adventure games specifically. It's a game I love, warts and all. Rumpelstiltskin warts and all.
All right. Well, that has been Quest, the adventure game podcast. Please, you can send us an email at questquestpodcast@gmail.com. Also, please rate and review us. That helps other people find this podcast. I know you're tired of hearing that from podcasters, but it's true. And you can watch us both on Twitch. I am PS_Garrick, GARAK, and Jess is
GCAF Jedi.
And you'll be able to join us next week when we start early. That's right, early. Putting together our March Madness bracket of inventory items in all adventure games. Join us then.